They thought they could break us. They were wrong. We are the daughters of the mountains. And as the sun sets on this battlefield, we rise! Burn them all! Victory or death! They stand against us in vain! Tear down the gates! For victory or death!
The knock didn't sound like a mistake. It wasn't hesitant. It wasn't uncertain. It came heavy and deliberate. Each strike against the door measured like the person on the other side knew exactly how much force it would take to be heard, and exactly how long to wait before doing it again. Thud. Silence. Thud. Elias Rook didn't move right away. Not because he hadn't heard it, but because of the hour. No one visited at midnight. Not in a place like this, where people kept to themselves and doors stayed closed after dark for reasons no one needed to say out loud. The wind outside had already picked up, pressing faintly against the shutters, but the knock cut through it like something solid. Intentional. Thud. Elias exhaled slowly, setting his book aside as he rose from his chair. His movements were careful, controlled, not cautious enough to look afraid, but not careless either. Old habits didn't leave. They just learned to stay quiet. By the time he reached the door, the silence on the other side had returned. Waiting. He rested his hand against the wood for a second, feeling nothing through it, but knowing someone was there. Then he opened it. The wind hit first, cold and sharp, carrying the scent of rain that hadn't started yet. Then the figure stepped into view. She filled the doorway without trying. Tall, broad-shouldered, still as stone. An orc. Her skin was a muted green, marked with scars that weren't hidden, because they weren't meant to be. Dark hair fell loosely around her face, damp from the night air, and her armor, it wasn't polished. It wasn't ceremonial. It was used, worn in the way that Minute had seen more than one fight, and survived all of them. But it wasn't any of that made Elias pause. It was her eyes. Steady, focused, already on him. You took your time, she said. Her voice was low, rough around the edges, like it had been shaped by more than just words. Elias frowned slightly. Do I know you? She didn't answer that. Instead, she stepped forward, just one step, and the space between them shrank in a way that felt intentional. You know why I'm here, she said. That wasn't a question. Elias held her gaze, searching for something familiar and finding nothing he could name. No, he replied calmly. I don't. Something shifted in her expression then. Not anger, not disappointment. Something closer to expectation. Like she had already considered this possibility and decided it didn't change anything. Then we'll fix that, she said. The wind picked up behind her, pushing against the door as if urging it closed again. Elias didn't move to shut it. Whatever this is, he said, his voice steady. You've got the wrong person. For the first time, she smiled. Not kindly, not cruelly, just certain. No, she said. I don't. Silence settled between them, thick and unmoving. Elias felt it then. Not recognition, not memory, something else. A weight, like a question he didn't remember being asked, but already owed an answer to. She stepped forward again, and this time, she didn't stop at the door. She didn't wait to be invited. The moment she crossed the threshold, the space changed, not because the room was small, but because she filled it in a way that made everything else feel secondary. The door remained open behind her for a second longer than it should have, the wind pushing in like it was trying to follow. Then Elias reached back and shut it. The sound echoed. Final. For a moment, neither of them spoke. She stood just inside, her gaze moving once, slow, deliberate, taking in the room. The table, the fire, the single chair, not searching for danger, confirming it. Then her attention returned to him. You live alone, she said. Elias leaned slightly against the table, keeping distance without making it obvious. That's usually how this works. Her eyes didn't leave his. No one else comes here. Not at midnight, he replied. Another pause. Then she stepped closer. Not threatening, but not casual either. You're not surprised, she said. Elias frowned slightly. Should I be? Yes. That answer came too quickly, too certain. He studied her more carefully now, his eyes tracing details he hadn't let himself focus on before. The armor, patched in places, but not poorly. The way she carried herself, balanced, like she expected movement at any moment. The scars, not random, purposeful. Earned. You've been in fights, he said. She didn't respond. You've traveled far, he added. Still nothing. But you didn't come here by accident. That earned him something. Not a reaction. Acknowledgement. I don't do accidents, she said. Elias crossed his arms slightly, his expression tightening just a fraction. Then start talking. She stopped in front of him, close enough now that he could see the faint lines in her skin, the small marks time hadn't erased. Her presence wasn't loud, but it was heavy, like standing too close to something that had already decided how things would go. You know why I'm here, she repeated. Elias exhaled slowly, his patience thinning, not with anger, but with the weight of something that didn't make sense. And I've already told you, I don't. Her gaze sharpened. Not louder, not harsher, sharper. Then think, she said. That wasn't a suggestion. It was a demand. Elias held her stare, refusing to look away, refusing to let the moment shift in her favor. I am thinking, he said, and I'm coming up empty. For a second, nothing happened. Then she reached up, not toward him, toward herself. Her hand moved to the side of her neck, brushing aside her hair just enough to reveal something hidden beneath it. A scar. Long, faded, but unmistakable. Elias's eyes caught it instantly, and something inside him shifted. Not memory. Not yet. But something close. You left me with this, she said quietly. The words didn't hit like an accusation. They hit like a fact. Elias didn't respond right away, because for the first time since she knocked on his door, he wasn't entirely sure he was right. Elias didn't look away from the scar. He couldn't. It wasn't just the mark itself, it was the way she said it. Not like she was trying to convince him. Not like she needed him to believe her. Just stating something that had already happened, whether he remembered it or not. You're wrong, he said finally. The words came out steady, practiced, like something he had said before. She didn't react, didn't argue, didn't even blink. That's what you're choosing? She asked. Choosing. Not knowing. Not remembering. Choosing. Elias frowned slightly, something tightening behind his eyes. I don't know you, he said. I've never seen you before tonight. She stepped closer, just enough to make the space between them disappear. Look again, she said. Her voice dropped, not louder, but heavier. Elias held her gaze, forcing himself to search for something familiar. A face, a voice, a moment, anything that connected. Nothing came, just that same pressure, that same feeling that something wasn't where it should be. I've fought before, he said slowly. I've seen things I'd rather not remember. But I don't forget people like you. That should have been enough. It wasn't. Her expression didn't change. If that were true, she said, I wouldn't be here. Silence. Elias exhaled through his nose, his patience thinning, not because she was wrong, but because he couldn't prove she was. Then maybe you've got the wrong man, he said. It wouldn't be the first time someone showed up with a story that didn't belong to me. That earned him something new. Not anger, not frustration, disappointment. Small, but real. I followed you for 3 days, she said. That landed. Harder than it should have. You don't make mistakes like that, she continued. Not your kind. My kind, Elias repeated. Men who walk away, she said. The words hit something. Not memory. Not fully, but close enough to make his jaw tighten. I don't know what you think I did, he said, quieter now. But I didn't leave you anywhere. She watched him, long enough to make the silence uncomfortable. Then, you didn't just leave, she said. A pause. Then, softer. You chose to. That was different. That wasn't accusation. That was something else. Something heavier. Elias felt it then. A flicker. Quick. Unclear. A shape of something. Firelight. Shouting. The sound of metal striking something it shouldn't. But it slipped before he could hold it. He blinked, his focus snapping back to her. What happened? He asked. The question came out before he could stop it. Not defensive. Not dismissive. Curious. That changed something. Just slightly. You really don't remember, she said. Not a question. A realization. Elias shook his head once, slower this time. No, he said. Silence followed. But it felt different now. Less like a standoff. More like something opening. Then she stepped back. Just enough to give him space. Good, she said. Elias frowned. Good. Her gaze didn't leave his. Because now, she replied, you don't get to hide behind it. That didn't sound like relief. It sounded like the beginning of something worse. Elias expected her to leave. Not because she was satisfied, but because most people, when they didn't get what they wanted, chose distance over persistence. It was easier that way. Cleaner. She didn't move. She stood there, just inside the room, like the conversation hadn't reached any kind of end at all. "You've said what you came to say," Elias said after a moment, his tone controlled. "If you're looking for answers, you're not going to find them here tonight." Her gaze stayed on him, unblinking. "I already did," she replied. That wasn't comforting. Elias crossed the room slowly, picking up the book he had set aside earlier, not because he intended to read it, but because he needed something familiar in his hands, something that grounded him in a reality that wasn't shifting under his feet. "You're still here," he said. "Yes." That wasn't an invitation. "I didn't ask for one." The words settled between them, sharp but not aggressive, just firm. Elias set the book down again. This wasn't going to resolve itself. "You're not staying," he said. She tilted her head slightly, like she was considering that, not as a command, but as an idea. "I am," she replied. That was it. No argument. No justification. Just a statement. Elias let out a quiet breath, running a hand through his hair as he turned away for a second, collecting his thoughts. When he looked back, she hadn't moved. Of course she hadn't. "You don't get to decide that," he said. "I already did. That's not how this works." Her expression didn't change. "It is tonight." Silence followed. Longer this time. He studied her again, more carefully than before. Not just what she looked like, but how she held herself. The way she stood without tension, without restlessness, like waiting didn't bother her. Like time wasn't something she worried about. "You're not leaving without something," he said. "No. And you think staying here is going to get you that?" "Yes." Elias shook his head slightly, a faint, humorless breath escaping him. "You're stubborn." Her lips pressed together. Not quite a smile, not quite anything else. "I learned from experience." That line carried more weight than it should have. Elias didn't respond to it. Instead, he moved toward the fire, adding another piece of wood to the flames. The light shifted slightly, casting longer shadows across the room, stretching her figure across the wall behind her in a way that made her presence feel even larger. "You can sit," he said after a moment, "or stand there all night. Doesn't make a difference to me." She didn't move at first. Then, slowly, she stepped forward and took the chair. Not cautiously, not carefully, like it belonged to her just as much as it did to him. Elias watched her for a second, then leaned back against the wall, folding his arms again. Neither of them spoke. The fire cracked softly, filling the space with a sound that didn't quite ease the tension. Outside, the wind picked up again. Inside, something else settled. Not understanding, not agreement, just presence. She wasn't leaving. And for the first time that night, Elias realized neither was the question she had brought with her. The night stretched longer than it should have. Not because of the hour, but because neither of them let it end. The fire burned low, shadows shifting slowly across the walls, but the silence between them never settled into comfort. It stayed alert, waiting. Elias noticed it first. Not something she said, something she didn't. Her eyes. They kept moving, not around the room, not searching, but returning to the same places. The same details, over and over again. The table, the shelf, the corner near the door. At first, he thought it was habit, awareness, the kind of scanning that came from someone who had lived too long expecting danger. But this was different. This was recognition. "You've been here before," he said. She didn't answer, but she didn't deny it either. Elias pushed off the wall, stepping slowly toward the table. "You keep looking at the same things," he continued. "Like you know where they are." "I know where they should be," she replied. That wasn't the same thing. Elias frowned slightly, his eyes following hers as they landed again on the shelf above the fireplace. There wasn't much there. A few old items. Things he hadn't touched in years. Things he didn't think about anymore. "What are you expecting to find?" he asked. She stood, not abruptly, but with purpose. Then she moved past him, not asking, not waiting. Her hand reached toward the shelf. Elias stepped forward instinctively. "Don't." Too late. She picked it up. A small object. Worn. Simple. A metal piece, dull with age, shaped into something that didn't stand out unless you knew what you were looking for. Elias stared at it, confusion flickering across his face. "That's just a unit marker," she said. Her voice was quiet now. Different. He stopped. "What?" She turned it slightly, the firelight catching the edges just enough to reveal the faint engraving etched into its surface. Symbols. Old. Familiar. Too familiar. Elias's chest tightened. I don't remember that, he said. She looked at him. Really looked. You wore it, she replied. The words didn't accuse. They confirmed. That's not possible, he said quickly. I've never. You fought, she cut in. That stopped him. You fought in the Southern Campaign, she continued. You stood with the third line. You carried orders. Elias shook his head, stepping back slightly. No, I would remember something like that. Would you? That question hit differently. Not challenging. Doubtful. Elias opened his mouth to respond, and then stopped, because something shifted. A flicker. The sound of boots on dirt. Voices. Orders shouted through smoke. A line forming. Breaking. He blinked hard, the image slipping before it could fully form. No, he said again. But this time, it wasn't as certain. She saw it. Of course she did. That's the first crack, she said quietly. Elias looked at her, something unsettled rising in his chest. What does that mean? It means, she replied, setting the marker down slowly. You're starting to remember. Silence fell again. But this time, it wasn't empty. It was opening. The fire had burned lower, but neither of them moved to fix it. Elias didn't notice. Not really. His attention was somewhere else now, caught between the room he stood in and something just beyond it, something half-formed and pulling at him in ways he didn't understand. You're wrong, he said again, quieter this time. But the words didn't carry the same weight. Not anymore. She didn't respond immediately. Instead, she watched him the way someone watches something fragile, something that might break if pushed too hard, but won't change if left alone. You don't forget a war, he added, more to himself than to her. No, she said. You don't. That should have settled it. It didn't. Elias paced once across the room, his hand running over the back of his neck like he was trying to pull something out of it by force. I remember trade routes, he said. Storm seasons. Bad years. I remember names, faces. Do you? She asked. That stopped him. Her voice wasn't louder, but it cut deeper. What are you saying? He demanded. She stepped closer again, not aggressively, but with purpose. I'm saying you remember what you chose to keep, she replied. And you buried the rest. Elias shook his head sharply. That's not how memory works. No, she agreed. It's how survival works. Silence hit harder this time, because that made sense. Too much sense. He turned away from her, his eyes landing on nothing in particular as something inside him shifted again. Another flicker, stronger this time. Heat. Smoke. The sound of metal striking metal. A line of soldiers, human, moving forward through something that wasn't quite a battlefield anymore. It was chaos. Broken ground. Bodies where they shouldn't be. His breath caught. Then it was gone. Elias staggered back a step, his hand catching the edge of the table to steady himself. What was that? He muttered. You tell me, she said. He looked at her, something unsettled in his expression now. I saw something. That's how it starts. No, he snapped, frustration rising. That's how confusion starts. She didn't argue, because she didn't need to. Elias ran a hand over his face, exhaling sharply. Even if I was there, he said, forcing the words into something solid. That doesn't mean I know you. You do. I don't. You will. That's certainty again. Unshaken. Elias let out a short, humorless breath. You keep talking like this is inevitable. It is. Why? He demanded. This time, she answered. Because you left, she said. The room stilled. Elias frowned. Left what? Her eyes didn't waver. The line, she said. A pause. Then, you walked away from the war. That landed differently. Not like the rest. Because it didn't just suggest something forgotten. It suggested something chosen. Elias shook his head slowly. I wouldn't do that. You did. No. You turned your back while it was still burning. The words hung in the air, heavy and unyielding. Elias stared at her, something tightening in his chest again. Not memory, not fully, but something close enough to hurt. Why would I do that? He asked. Her expression didn't change, but her voice did. Softer, colder. Because you saw what it cost, she said. And you decided it wasn't worth staying for. Silence followed. Not empty, not uncertain, just unavoidable. The words didn't come all at once. They had been building, quietly, steadily, through everything she had said, everything he had refused to understand. But when they finally surfaced, they didn't feel like anger. They felt like something that had waited too long. You left me to die. Elias didn't respond. Not immediately, because something inside him recognized it. Not the full memory, Not the moment, but the weight of it. That's not true, he said finally, but the certainty wasn't there anymore. She stepped closer, close enough that the space between them disappeared again. It is, she replied. Her voice wasn't raised. Didn't need to be. Elias shook his head, his thoughts scrambling to catch something solid. I don't remember you, he said. I don't remember any of this. That doesn't change what happened. It should, he snapped. That was frustration. Real. Because if he didn't remember, how could he be responsible? Her expression hardened slightly. Responsibility doesn't disappear just because you forgot it, she said. That landed harder than anything else she'd said all night. Elias took a step back, his hand dragging across his face again as if he could wipe the confusion away. Then tell me, he said. Stop speaking in pieces and just tell me what you think I did. For a moment, she didn't answer. Then she exhaled slowly. You didn't run from the battle, she said. Not at first. Elias stilled. You stayed, she continued. Longer than most. You held your ground when others broke. That didn't sound like him, but it didn't sound wrong either. There was a breach, she went on. The line collapsed. Everything turned into noise and fire, and people trying to survive something that had already gone wrong. Her gaze didn't leave his. I was there. Elias's chest tightened. I was fighting on the other side, she said. Not because I chose it, but because that's where I belonged. A pause. Then, and you saw me. Something cracked. Not fully, but enough. A flicker, stronger this time. Flashes of movement. A figure across the chaos. Green skin, blood, a weapon raised. Gone. Elias inhaled sharply. What did I do, he asked. The question came out quieter now. Careful. She didn't soften. You hesitated, she said. That wasn't what he expected. I was injured, she continued. Pinned. Surrounded. Her hand lifted slightly, unconsciously brushing the scar at her neck. You had a choice. Silence. Heavy. You could have finished it, she said. Elias swallowed. Or you could have pulled me out. Another flicker. Hands. Smoke. A voice shouting something he couldn't quite hear. Gone again. What did I choose, he asked. Her eyes locked onto his. Unmoving. You walked away. The room felt smaller. Tighter. Elias shook his head slowly, something deeper in his chest rejecting that before his mind could process it. No, he said. Yes. I wouldn't. You did. The words cut clean. No hesitation. No doubt. Elias stared at her, something unraveling inside him now. Not just confusion, not just denial. Something worse. Because the more she spoke, the more it didn't feel impossible. I didn't kill you, he said, like that mattered. Her expression didn't change. No, she agreed. A pause. Then, you just made sure someone else could. Silence fell. Complete. And this time, Elias didn't have anything left to say. The silence didn't break. It deepened. Elias stood there, the weight of her words settling into something heavier than denial could carry. He wanted to reject it, to push it away like everything else that didn't fit. But something had changed. Because now, the fragments weren't random. They were connecting. I didn't kill you, he said again, quieter this time. Not as a defense, but as something he needed to understand. No, she replied. You didn't. Then why are you here? That question lingered. Because it mattered more than everything else. She studied him for a moment, like she was deciding how much truth he could handle now that the door had started to open. Because you don't remember the part that matters, she said. Elias didn't move. Then tell me, he said. This time, he didn't argue, didn't resist. He needed it. She nodded once. Then, you didn't walk away first, she said. That stopped him. You hesitated, she continued. You saw me. You knew I was there. And for a second, you didn't see an enemy. Another flicker. Stronger. Her face. Younger. Covered in dirt and blood. Eyes locked onto his through smoke and chaos. Gone. Elias exhaled sharply. You stepped toward me, she said. His head snapped up. That's not what you said before. I'm not finished. Silence. Then, you cut the rope. The words landed carefully, deliberately. Elias frowned. What rope? Her hand lifted slightly, gesturing toward her shoulder, then her side. I was trapped, held in place. You freed me. That didn't fit. Not with what she had said before. You helped me, he asked. For a moment, she replied. Another flicker. A blade slicing through something tight. A body falling. A breath of space. Elias staggered slightly as the image slipped through his mind. Sharper now, more real. Then what happened? He asked. Her expression tightened. Orders came through, she said. That word again. Orders. They told you to fall back. To abandon the line. Elias's jaw clenched. That sounds right, he said slowly. If the line broke, retreat. You didn't argue, she cut in. The words were sharper now. Not louder. Sharper. You didn't stay to make sure I got out, she continued. You didn't finish what you started. Another flash. Voices shouting. Fall back. Movement. Turning. Leaving. Elias shut his eyes for a second, the image hitting harder this time. I thought, he started, then stopped. Because he didn't know what he had thought. That's the part you forgot, she said. He looked at her. What? You didn't choose between killing me or saving me, she said. A pause. Then, you chose yourself. Silence. Elias felt it fully now. Not just the memory, the meaning. I thought I was following orders, he said quietly. You were, she replied. That's what soldiers do. Her gaze didn't waver. And that's what got me almost killed. The truth settled in. Heavy. Unavoidable. Elias exhaled slowly, something in his chest shifting from confusion into something else. Something clearer. I didn't mean to leave you, he said. She didn't react. Intent doesn't change the outcome, she replied. Another pause. Then, you gave me a chance, she added. That was new. Elias looked up. And then you took it away. That was the part that mattered. Not the war. Not the sides. The moment in between, where he had almost done the right thing, and didn't finish it. Elias swallowed, his voice quieter now. So why didn't you die? Her expression shifted slightly. Not softer, but deeper. Because I didn't wait for someone else to decide if I lived, she said. And just like that, the truth was complete. And it wasn't something he could walk away from this time. The fire had nearly gone out. Neither of them noticed. The room felt colder now, not from the night, but from everything that had been said and everything that couldn't be undone. Elias stood where he had been, the weight of the truth settling into something that didn't leave room for excuses anymore. I understand, he said quietly. She didn't respond. Because understanding wasn't why she was here. You want an apology, he added, searching for something that felt like it might matter. Still nothing. Elias frowned slightly. You came all this way. For that, didn't you? That earned him a reaction. Not anger. Not frustration. Something sharper. No, she said. The word cut clean. I didn't come for words. Elias stilled. Then what? You think this is about closure? She continued, her voice steady, controlled. About hearing you say you're sorry, so I can walk away and pretend it means something? Elias didn't answer. Because he didn't have one. She stepped closer. Not aggressively, but with purpose. I survived that night, she said. Not because of you. In spite of you. That wasn't an accusation. It was a fact she had already accepted. So no, she went on. I didn't come here for an apology. Elias's chest tightened slightly. Then what do you want? That was the question. The one that had been there since the moment she knocked. She held his gaze. Unmoving. I want the answer you never gave me, she said. Elias frowned. What answer? Her expression didn't change. Why? The words settled between them. Simple. Heavy. Elias blinked once, caught off guard by how much weight a single word could carry. I told you, he said. I followed orders. The line broke. That's not why, she cut in. Her voice didn't rise. But it didn't need to. That's what you did, she said. Not why you did it. Silence. Elias exhaled slowly, his mind searching for something real, something honest. I thought staying would get me killed, he said finally. She didn't react. That's the truth, he added. Is it? He frowned. Yes. Another step closer. You saw me, she said. You knew I wasn't fighting anymore. You knew I couldn't move. A pause. And you still turned away. Elias held her gaze, something tightening in his chest again. Not confusion this time. Recognition. Not of the moment. Of himself. I was afraid, he said. The words came out quieter than anything he'd said all night. But they felt heavier. More real. I didn't think about you, he admitted. I didn't think about what would happen if I left. I just... A pause. Then, I chose to survive. Silence. Complete. She watched him. Not judging. Not forgiving. Just listening. That was the answer. Not clean. Not heroic. Not something that made the past better. Just true. After a moment, she nodded once. Small. Barely there. But it mattered. That's all I needed, she said. Elias frowned slightly. That's it. That's it. He didn't understand. Not fully. You came all this way just to hear that? Her gaze didn't leave his. I came to hear if you'd lie about it, she said. That landed. Because he could have. Because part of him had wanted to. But he didn't. Another pause. Then she stepped back. The space between them returning. Not empty, but different. You didn't save me, she said. Elias nodded slowly. I know. And you didn't come back. I know. Silence again. Then. But you told the truth. That was the only thing left. And somehow, it was enough. Morning came quietly. Not with light, but with the absence of darkness. The kind that slipped into the room slowly, turning shadows into shapes again, reminding the world it hadn't stopped just because something inside it had changed. Elias hadn't slept. He hadn't tried. There was no point. The fire had died sometime before dawn, leaving only faint warmth in the air and the echo of everything that had been said lingering between them. He stood near the window now, staring out at nothing in particular, his thoughts finally still, not because they had settled, but because they had reached something final. Behind him, she hadn't moved much either. Not pacing, not restless, just waiting. Not for him, for something else. Elias turned slightly as the light shifted enough to reveal her more clearly. She was standing near the door now, her posture the same as when she had first entered, steady, balanced, unchanged. But something was different. Not in how she stood. In why. You're leaving, he said. She didn't answer right away. Then, yes. That word felt quieter than everything else she had said. Not lighter. Just finished. Elias nodded once, like he understood that more than he had expected to. You got what you came for, he said. I did. Silence followed. But it wasn't heavy anymore. It wasn't pressing. It just existed. Elias glanced toward the table, where the small unit marker still rested exactly where she had left it. He stared at it for a second, then reached out, picking it up slowly. I don't know what I'm supposed to do with this, he admitted. She looked at it, then at him. You remember, she said. That was enough. Not forgiveness. Not redemption. Just something that wouldn't be ignored anymore. Elias closed his hand around the marker, his grip tightening slightly, not out of anger, but out of something closer to acceptance. I won't forget again, he said. She studied him for a moment, like she was measuring the weight of that promise, not expecting anything from it, but not dismissing it either. Then she stepped toward the door. This time, she didn't hesitate. Her hand rested on the handle for just a second before she opened it. The morning air slipped inside, cool and steady, carrying none of the tension from the night before. She paused in the doorway, not turning fully, not leaving yet. Next time, she said, her voice calm. Don't wait for someone to come looking for your answers. Elias nodded once. I won't. Another second passed. Then she stepped outside. And this time, she didn't look back. The door remained open for a moment longer before Elias moved, closing it slowly behind her. The sound wasn't final like it had been the night before. It was quieter, lighter. He stood there for a while after that, the room feeling different, not empty, but no longer held in place by something unresolved. The question she had brought with her was gone. The answer remained. Elias looked down at the marker in his hand, then set it back on the table, but not where it had been before. Somewhere he would see it. Somewhere he wouldn't forget. Outside, the day moved forward like it always did. Inside, something had changed. Not everything. Not enough to undo what had been done. But enough. Because this time, when the past knocked, he had answered.